I'm joined now by Amber Duke, Interim Executive Director and Deputy Director of the ACLU of Kentucky, one of the groups challenging Kentucky's abortion bans on behalf of the state's abortion providers. Also with us is Rachel Sweet, Campaign Manager of Project Kansas, the group leading the effort to defeat Kentucky's anti-abortion amendment. She also previously served as the Campaign Manager of Kansans for Constitutional Freedom, which succeeded in defeating a similar effort in Kansas this August. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Rachel, let me start with you. You ran both the Kansas and the Kentucky campaigns. What's the difference between the two states, the campaigns and the electorates? Did you have to change up your strategy for Kentucky?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these are two states that we know are obviously, if you look purely at the numbers, past electoral results for candidates, these are two states that are relatively conservative. However, we know that this issue does not fall neatly along partisan political lines. For most voters, abortion is not a partisan issue. It is a personal issue, it is a medical issue, and it is something that they believe politicians need to stay out of. In Kentucky, the number of registered Democrats and Republicans is actually much closer to 50-50 than it was in a state like Kansas. And we're also dealing with the fact that this issue is on a general election ballot as opposed to the primary election ballot that we had in Kansas. So we are going to have to do a lot more to mobilize and activate voters who are particularly motivated by this issue of abortion. But if Kansas told us anything, it's that having an issue on the ballot where voters can make their voices heard directly instead of just voting for candidates who have complex positions on a lot of issues really does activate and mobilize voters who typically don't participate in the political process. So we still see that as an opportunity, despite the fact that we're dealing with a bigger electorate to start with here in Kentucky.
Amber, I was trying in my introduction in the last block to make this as clear as it can be, but it's complicated because you've got various abortion bans and then you have this this amendment. ACLU Kentucky is party to the lawsuit challenging the existing bans in Kentucky. Oral arguments for that are scheduled for the week after Election Day. So explain to me how the outcome of this ballot question on Tuesday will affect the lawsuit.
Well, I think you explained it pretty clearly in the introduction. The stakes could not be higher for Tuesday. Amendment 2 would place an abortion ban directly into Kentucky's constitution. It would codify it. So, of course, after what happened with the Dobbs decision over the summer, we can no longer point to the federal constitution and abortion rights there. We've had to pivot our fight to the state courts. And so I'll say that Kentucky has a strong constitution. You know, there are strong rights to privacy. There's a strong right to self-determination, meaning Kentuckians have the right to determine their own path. We believe that that includes the right to reproductive freedom, which of course includes access to abortion. So Kentucky State Constitution is our best and strongest legal tool that we have in order to restore and protect access to abortion care in Kentucky moving forward. If Amendment 2 were to pass, we would lose that ability. So we would be looking even more intently than we already are to Congress, the folks in Washington, D.C., to codify abortion rights into federal law so that folks here in Kentucky or wherever they are across the United States would have access to this essential health care.
Rachel, there was a wildly active misinformation and disinformation effort in Kansas in the lead up to the vote. I was in Michigan 2 weeks ago where they've got Proposal 3, which would do the opposite of what Kentucky's trying to do. It would codify abortion rights in the state constitution. But there's also a misinformation campaign there. I spoke to a number of conservatives who said, well, this is going to allow transgender kids to get gender reassignment surgery without their parents' consent. That's just not true. That's nowhere in this proposal. But you do have to contend with things like this in Kentucky.
Absolutely. So the anti-abortion movement is continuing to lie about the impact of their policies because they know that their policies are unpopular. Kentucky has already banned abortion, as we've discussed, in virtually every instance. Kentucky's laws do not provide exceptions for rape and incest. They provide very limited exceptions for when a woman's life and health is at risk. So they know that their policies are outside of the mainstream, not just for Kentucky voters, but for voters across the country. And so instead of winning on the merits of their issue, they have to lie. They have to put language in these ballot measures that says things like taxpayer-funded abortion. taxpayer-funded abortion is not a thing in Kentucky or in any part of this country in a conservative state. They really want to gin up fear and anxiety about the things about this topic that make voters most uncomfortable. And so our job as Protect Kentucky Access with our coalition partners is to really cut through the noise and make it clear, what exactly does this proposal do? This isn't some marginal change or nibbling around the edges of this issue. This is about what rights do women in Kentucky have today, and what rights will future generations have to determine their own path, to access fundamental reproductive health care. And that's really what's at stake in this election. So what we have to do is just be louder, be more clear and consistent, and really just make sure that we are cutting through the noise and making this clear for voters, because there is a lot of misinformation that we have to combat.
Amber, unlike Kansas, where the state Supreme Court previously found that abortion is protected under the state constitution, Kentucky doesn't have that same protection. This abortion ballot measure isn't going to change that. It's basically about keeping the status quo, and Republicans still have control of the state houses, so that's not going to end. Let's talk about what Rachel just talked about, the future legal challenges as a result. You said you'd have to move you shift your focus to state court, but does that increase your chances or lessen your chances? What does it do?
Well, again, the challenges that we used to fight were at the federal level. After Dobbs, we have had to pivot to the state court. Now, again, Kentucky has a very strong constitution. We believe that we have a strong case. We've been up and down since this summer, Kentucky's court system. As you stated, we're sitting at the level of the Kentucky Supreme Court. Our team is preparing for oral arguments, which are scheduled for November 15th. What we're hoping for is a temporary injunction, meaning we hope that abortion access can be restored in Kentucky while we litigate with our co-counsel at Planned Parenthood. We'll see what happens. Whenever the Kentucky Supreme Court weighed in on this and set the oral argument date, they were very clear. And in their ruling, they said Kentuckians are going to have their opportunity to voice their opinion on this issue on November 8th. So it's very clear that the justices of the Kentucky Supreme Court are also going to be watching what happens on Tuesday in Kentucky very closely. And that will have an impact on our ability to be successful in restoring abortion access.
I'm grateful to both of you for spending some time with me this morning to explain this important issue. Rachel Sweet is the campaign manager for Protect Kentucky Access. Amber Duke is the interim executive director and deputy director for the ACLU of Kentucky.